Well, g'day folks. Well, I think we finally have a workable solution for editing HLG shots in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now, it's not perfect, but it will do for now until Adobe fixes the problem itself. So forget all about my other HLG vids. Watch them back if you like, for nostalgic purposes. But anyway, let's get straight into it. If you're like me and you are frustrated with HLG in Adobe Premiere Pro, then look no further, my friend.
Excellent!
So what's the solution? We use a correction LUT. And by the way, if you're in a hurry and you don't like the sound of my voice, I'll put a link in the description below to ones I've already created.
I'm gone.
Good, then get the hell out of my life. Who needs you? Beat it, leave me alone!
But if you'd like to know more, then please stick around.
I'm sorry, babe. I didn't mean that either. I just yell sometimes because I get so scared.
Now, if you edit in DaVinci Resolve, you'll already know this, but DaVinci Resolve has a color space transformation node that transforms your shot into rec709 first. And then you can go ahead and grade it normally. But Adobe Premiere never had anything like that, which is crazy, right?
No way.
So basically, we want to make our own color transformation node. Now, thanks to Gerald Undone in his last video, he reminded me of the LUT calc. And yes, that will be perfect. Thank you, Gerald. So the solution is to create a color correction LUT and import that into our editing software. Let's cover LUT calc for Adobe Premiere Pro. And this will also be relevant for any other NLE that doesn't handle its own color space transforms. Okay, LUT calc. What we need for Premiere is just a way to control the colors in a predictable way. We don't need to change the gamma or exposure, just the colors. Like I said before, I've already made a LUT called HLG to rec709 underscore pw.cube, and also the reverse if needed, rec709 to HLG.cube, and I'll put those down below. So if you're in a hurry, and probably is the best thing to do, is just download these and just trust me that I've tried all the combinations already to see what works best in Adobe Premiere Pro. But here is what I did, just in case you'd like to make your own. So what we do is we keep the rec and out gamma the same. So that's rec 2100 HLG, 2020 or 2100, doesn't matter, because we're not going to do any operations there, as long as it's the same. It's like a pass-through. But for gamut, which is the colors, that's all we change. So rec gamut is rec 2020 to out gamut rec 709, and leave everything else. Give it a nice name. 65 cube works well in Premiere, yes. Like I said, I've tried all these numbers, and I've also tried here 100% in, 100% out works. Otherwise it can look washed out and faded. And that's it. Generate out. And for the reverse, we only change rec gamut to rec 709 and out gamut to rec 2100. 100%, change the name and generate LUT, and you're done. Now, copy your LUTs into somewhere convenient. For Macs, go to the application itself, show package contents for Premiere Pro, Lumetri, LUTs, then I like to put it in the creative folder, so that way when I import it I can control the slider. Okay, it's the same for Windows, except obviously it's program files, Adobe Premiere Pro, LUTs, etc. But place them once again in the creative folder. You don't have to do this. You can do this or simply browse to where it is within Premiere. Now inside Premiere, import your shot. See if it hasn't already been transformed to rec709. Should be quite obvious in the viewport. It'll be quite saturated actually. If not, then we create a Lumetri. Go to Creative and choose, well, mine's called HLG to rec709 underscore PW, or choose Browse if it's not there, and that's it. So if it's an S1H shot like this, it should go from something quite grey and greenish to fully saturated. And in fact, it's a bit too saturated. So I've already turned down this to like 80% or less for the S1H shots. I think looks good. Now that the colors are transformed correctly, we can just go ahead and grade our shots normally. Perfect. Okay, so that shot, of course, of Samara was the Panasonic S1H, HLG in H.264. If it was a H.265 shot, Adobe would automatically transform it to rec709, like this. So we can compare them actually, see how the LUT calc did. And I think they match up quite nicely. So that's a tick. It definitely works for the S1H. Okay, let's compare the HLG shots between the a7 III and the S1H. I think when the a7S III finally arrives, it will be similar to the a7 III in terms of HLG. I don't really expect Sony to change that much. It's pretty consistent in that way. Now, the two shots on the left are Sony, and the two shots on the right are S1H. The first Sony shot is actually me setting the colors on the camera to rec709. And when you bring this shot into Premiere Pro, it doesn't touch it. So this is exactly how it was shot. The second Sony shot on the bottom is me setting the colors to BT 2020 in camera. And the one thing I've always noticed about the Sony is it's actually not that bad right out of camera, the BT 2020 colors. They don't seem that extreme to me, but more on that later. We'll move fast, so we'll speed this up. Over to the right, we have the S1H. The first one is 6K, which gives us H.265, and that is the one that Premiere transforms automatically to rec709 colors. And as you can see here, it's quite saturated, but it's actually very similar to the Sony rec709 shot right out of the camera. Now, as you can see, the last S1H shot is the most desaturated looking, which tells us that this shot is probably pushed the most in terms of varying color space, compared to the Sony on the left, which doesn't actually seem quite as exaggerated, so that's interesting. Now, there's probably an opportunity for someone else out there to make a further video on this using a proper color chart, because I'm not going to do that in this video, but I'm 100% sure that it will confirm that the colors on the Sony aren't as pushed in to the 2020 gamut as the S1H. Okay, now let's try to grade all these to match. Let's start with the S1H down bottom right. So we'll grab a Lumetri and HLG to rec709, and as you can see, it's a bit strong, but not by much. Let's reduce that to say 80%. And that matches pretty closely to what Adobe does automatically to the H.265 shot above. Okay, now we'll do the Sony HLG 2020 shot on bottom left. We'll add Lumetri, HLG to rec709, and it is crazy saturated. But I guess from eyeballing the shots before, that's kind of what we expected. So in this case, let's go down even more, let's say about 60% strength. It matches in terms of saturation, but the colors are a little bit off, which is interesting. It's close, but not exactly what we want. Actually, let's just check one thing first quickly. Is our project in maximum bit depth? This won't change anything for the Sony, of course, because that's always only in 8 bits on the a7 III. But I guess in this case, we should probably turn that back off while grading, since it'll just slow my machine down, and we'll only turn that back on if we detect banding or anything similar. Okay, back to the problem child, the Sony. Let's fix it ourselves, hey, in the curves rollout. You know, this kind of vindicates us Sony shooters when from shooting in HLG in the past and grading it like this. I mean, a transform LUT is basically doing the same thing, pushing colors around, the hues around, but in this instance we're just mainly focusing on skin tones, so we'll adjust some saturation and hue for the skin. We'll get our color from the skin there. By the way, yeah, you'll probably notice the lighting is slightly different from these shots, the Sony and S1H, because I went back and did the S1H shots on the next day. But it's close enough. I actually think the lighting is a bit better on the right. Plus I shaved. Anyway, so we've reduced saturation a bit, but not too much. I think the tricky part is the hue part. Looks like small adjustments make a big difference, so be careful. And looks like pushing it up towards red and magenta help it match a lot better. Actually, maybe we'll reduce the intensity of the LUT a bit more too. And that looks about right. Like I said, that's how I used to grade Sony HLG shots before, so it's nice to know we weren't far off. But it's also now nice to know that once we transform our shot into the correct color space, that we can do the same extra adjustments confidently, and it's a better starting point. It's all fine tuning though, whether you just grade them from scratch or use a transform LUT. Okay, last thing. What if we want to go in reverse? So the top left shot. So what if we want to go from Sony's rec709 to HLG? So we'll use the Sony shot above, we'll try. A Lumetri rec709 to HLG. And yes, it is quite desaturated when you, well, especially when you compare it to the one below. Okay, so if we turn off the LUT below, on the Sony shot below, and we compare 2020 colors now, we can see that the transform is too extreme on the Sony shot on the top there. So we'll obviously reduce that quite a lot. And the hues are slightly different again, but we can easily fine tune for that. Now, of course, once you're done, you can add an adjustment layer on top of all of that, assuming we're happy with the white balance and exposure and all the shots. So yeah, we'll add an adjustment layer. This one's just off-the-shelf Adobe Kodak 5205 or whatever at 70%. And you can tweak that a bit too, make it brighter if needed. And sometimes if it wigs out on that same Lumetri node, we can quickly make another one and do our adjustments on that. But pretty good overall. I am much happier with this technique, and I think I can hand over shots to the editor pretty confidently from two different cameras and provide this LUT and be quite confident that she's not going to have too much trouble matching cameras. Perfect.
Very good. But brick, not hit back.
Oh, and before I go, one more important thing. You may have already noticed, but Adobe Premiere also changes the look slightly when exporting. I know, right? So I recommend instead of jumping online and looking for yet another LUT or some confusing, mysterious black box thing, I suggest we try this instead. When you're ready to export, make an adjustment layer, put it over everything, and place a Lumetri node and give it a touch of saturation, say 105, and lower the gamma just a tad. Okay, this is a starting point. And maybe export a frame or two, and then compare it to what you see in the sequence window, in the project window. Now it should match a lot closer, and tweak it as you need, but this is much easier, yeah? And for me, this is close enough. It's so close that now I don't really worry about the export problem anymore. Just make sure to hide this layer if you need to re-edit your shot, and we only show it for exporting. Okay, now you're ready to go out and shoot HLG confidently. Especially if you're a Premiere Pro or even Final Cut user. All you need are these transform LUTs, and you won't have to be at the mercy of how these NLEs are handling HLG footage. So remember, this works for all cameras when shooting in HLG, and well, knowing my awesome luck, Adobe will probably release some kind of update right after I finish this video and fix the color space transformation problem and make their own node themselves. But until they do, this is our workaround. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.